بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to support the channel. So I was sent a clip of political scientist and esteemed author Professor Norman Finkelstein reacting and responding to anti-Muslim extremists Musab, Hassan, Yousef, aka the son of Hamas, and Sam Harris. Musab is a stereotypical ex-Muslim who has dedicated his life to hating Islam. He supposedly converted to Christianity and also twists the tenets of that faith to fuel his hatred for Muslims. And you guessed it, he brazenly cheers on Israel as they wipe out Muslim children. Sam Harris is another anti-Muslim creep whose reason for existing and only means of earning a living depends on his hatred for Islam also. Sam is an atheist from a Jewish background that also sees Muslims as subhuman. And of course, he also unashamedly supports Israel wiping out Muslim kids. All we're missing is a Hindu supremacist and a far-right nationalist, and we would have the full set of anti-Muslim caricatures that desperately parade around online these days seeking recognition and relevance. Let's take a look at the clip where Norman Finkelstein shuts down both the son of Hamas and Sam Harris for disrespecting Islam and Muslims.
Mossab Hassan Yousef, he's the son of one of the Hamas co-founders who then renounced Hamas and moved away. And he said this about what's going on at the moment in the Israel-Gaza war. Let's take a listen.
Any person who put the religious identity above the highest interest of humanity, I have no respect for this people. The majority of the Muslim people identified with Hamas, supported Hamas. Show me how many Muslims out there who condemned Hamas genocide.
What was interesting about that is that he was really suggesting that the motivating factor behind what Hamas did and why people are supporting them in such big numbers in the Muslim community is because they're Muslims. It's religion driven. Now, you're an atheist, but what do you think of that, of this idea that it's actually really about religion?
Well, I'm going to agree with him. I think it's interesting to note that many of your listeners will doubt my ability to make the statements of the sort I'm now going to make, but they can't doubt that of him, right? I mean, he obviously knows whereof he speaks, right? You can't play the identity politics game with him and say that, you know, he doesn't understand the culture, he's the wrong skin color, he doesn't speak the language, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a vast number of people in the Muslim community worldwide, not just in the occupied territories or in Gaza, who are powerfully deranged by religious symbols and their religious identity, which is to say, it is the most important thing to them, but more important even than the deaths of their own children, right? We're talking about a culture, again, I'm not talking about just Palestinians, I'm talking about the Muslim community worldwide in dozens of countries that has produced a seemingly unending supply of suicide bombers over the last 50 years, right? Where we're talking about societies where phenomenon that should be impossible are simply to be expected. I mean, literally like rigging children to explode. A child isn't simply a child, but a child might, in fact, under certain circumstances, be a bomb, right? I mean, that is the situation we're in. We're talking about a society, and now I'm talking about the Gaza and the West Bank in particular, where in their schools, they teach 6-year-olds the love of martyrdom, the literal aspiration to die as a martyr, and the hatred of Jews. And many of these schools are UN funded, right? So this is a terrifying situation.
Sam Harris, these statements are just certifiably imbecile. He says, well, this guy knows from the inside that these Muslims are crazy. First of all, he's not a Muslim. He renounced his Islam. He's an evangelical Christian. Secondly, I thought you said we can't trust religious fanatics. But this guy is a religious fanatic. He's a fanatical evangelical Christian. So why do we suddenly credit his testimony? He's a crazy Christian. And the common denominator is he's clearly a lunatic, or he's paid well. Let's say he was a Muslim. On what basis do we deduce that he's representative of 1.5 billion Muslims? Where did we make that leap? He's one individual. Then he says that Islam is deranged. It produces a prodigious number of suicide bombers. Does he cite anything? How many? How many Muslim children are rigged to explode? You say it's somehow this phenomenon is peculiar to Islam. How many people? By his reckoning, every time a Muslim student walks in my class, I should be terrified that he may explode. He says that Muslim culture is powerfully deranged. I'd like to ask him a question, Mr. Harris. Right now, Israel is committing a genocide in broad daylight, in real time, nothing concealed. Genocide unfolding. We have headlines. Yesterday, there was a headline in the Times, 90% of Gaza's population faces starvation. Now, this is not starvation because of crop failure. It's not the Irish potato famine. It's a human-contrived starvation, which is embraced by leadership in Israel, the United States government, but also, since we're talking about people who are powerfully deranged, 1 month into the Israeli genocide in Gaza, there was a poll done, Time magazine, and it reported that 57% of Israelis think that Israel is not using enough force in Gaza. Now, there's no fog of war. Israelis have a relatively free media, and they all have access to the internet. So they see all the same pictures as you see and I see. They see all of those kids, and they think not enough force is being used. Do you know what percentage you think too much force is being used? 2%. So I would say that's prima facie evidence of being powerfully deranged. Israel is a citizen army. That means they're representative of Israelis. So when they carry out the genocide, everyone in Israel is either a war criminal or a vicarious war criminal. They brought up 50,000 reservists. Everybody participating is a participant in a genocide. That's Israeli society. He says these bombers, they're powerfully deranged. I don't think it's a good thing when people blow themselves up. But here's something. I don't think it's a good thing when you blow other people up either. I don't think that's particularly civilized. I don't think there's any comparative redeeming virtue in murdering others from high-tech weapons and murdering them with your body. How about targeting ambulances? How about targeting desalinization plants? Is that better? What makes it better, Mr. Harris? So you can say, no, that's not the same because with Hamas and the other fanatics, they blow up innocents. Really? Fine, I agree with that. And what do you think is going on in Gaza? Hospitals, where Human Rights Watch concluded that there was no military justification for the targeting of hospitals. What are you targeting in hospitals? You're talking about targeting the lame, the sick, the nearly dead, and the newborn. That's what you're targeting in hospitals. That's okay. It bewilders you how a reputedly intelligent person can say things which are just so transparently stupid.
First off, with what just happened at the German Christmas market, it's clear there is definitely a problem with radical ex-Muslim and anti-Muslim extremism in the West, most of which manifests itself online, with all the perpetrators constantly dehumanizing Muslims to get views and a paycheck, inspiring their followers to harm innocent civilians on the streets of Europe and America. You will have noticed that whenever we see Mosab, he just looks demonic. That's not a coincidence. He emanates negativity and hatred because he thrives on hurting other people through his Islamophobia. Anyone earning money from covering up the unjust deaths of his own people is simply a monster. Sam Harris, the bigot, obviously agreed with the ex-Muslim extremist and even went as far as dehumanizing all Muslim children, falsely painting them as a perceived danger to all non-Muslims. This is a Zionist rhetoric. They portray innocent kids as potential future threats when they are older to justify killing them now. It's just a sick and satanic mindset. These are innocent children. How deep has someone's prejudice got to run to wish harm on kids and not even express any remorse at their suffering just because they were born Muslim? As you saw, both Sam Harris and the son of Hamas disgracefully blamed Islam as a religion for why all Palestinians are bad and for the atrocities Israel is committing, absolving them of all wrongdoing as if they are not making a conscious choice to pull the trigger or drop explosives or to starve people. Norman was spot on when he labelled Sam Harris imbecilic and stupid. I liked how Professor Finkelstein exposed Mosab for the fraud he is by correctly pointing out that he is an ex-Muslim, evangelic Christian, religious fanatic, and that anything the son of Hamas says can't be taken seriously because he's clearly a lunatic. Norman Finkelstein also debunked Sam Harris's disgustingly prejudicial claim that all Muslims, including children, are deranged people that are prone to self-delete and explode themselves. Mr. Finkelstein correctly said, "Don't just make idiotic claims, give the statistics." Well, I did some digging, and it seems currently the US have a bigger problem with domestic extremism in the form of school shootings than they do with Middle Eastern extremism. American school shooters who are mostly atheists like Sam or Christian like Mosab are more prevalent today than Muslim self-exploding attacks, with hundreds of schools being targeted for many decades now. In 2024, the US experienced the highest rate of this type of American extremism, which unfortunately saw a record number of 83 schools being targeted in a year. It looks like the problem isn't Islam, it's just crazy people from all backgrounds that do crazy things. Or are you going to blame what your fellow atheists did on Muslims as usual, Sam? The truth is, any type of self-harm, harming others, or taking one's own life is completely forbidden in Islam. Another fact is that the majority of Muslims would never commit such acts, and we also condemn the small minority of extremists that do so and actually don't even consider them to be following Islam properly. Norman Finkelstein brilliantly compared how deranged Israeli culture is compared to Islam in refuting Sam Harris's discriminatory claims. He basically outlined how the majority of Israeli citizens actively take part in the genocide of Palestinians through their mandatory military service, and despite seeing all the images of children and civilians being mercilessly wiped out through airstrikes, snipers and starvation, the same majority of Israelis think more pain should be inflicted on Palestinians. What's scary is both Mosab and Sam Harris not only consider this genocide as justified, they also see this extreme cruelty as civilized. It's clear to see who the deranged people are in this equation. And I agree with Professor Finkelstein when he said we all condemn self-deleting, self-exploding nutcases that weaponize Islam to harm others. However, the Israeli military and government are no better, as they're doing the same thing, except on a much larger scale, just minus the self-deletion factor. They're weaponizing Judaism to ethnically cleanse a nation of people using high-tech weapons from afar. Anybody whitewashing these war criminals that target schools, homes, hospitals and places of worship is a fanatic and an extremist. That goes for Sam Harris, Musab, Hassan, Yousef and all their anti-Muslim peers and followers. Like I've said previously, these people need to be put on government watch lists, and all influencers pushing this type of divisive hatred should face criminal prosecution. Thank you for watching. Make sure to join my free Telegram group via the link in the description, where we as Muslims can speak freely and without censorship about issues like this. And remember to like, subscribe and become a channel member for access to exclusive content. Until next time, inshallah, Jazakallah khair.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.